My name's Dana Mitra from Penn State University.
And I'm Brian Mann from Penn State University.
And with Mark Klavacek, our article is entitled Opting Out: Parents Creating Contested Spaces to Challenge Standardized Tests. Our article explores how parents choose whether to pull their kids out of standardized testing. Increasing numbers of parents across the nation are deciding that standardized tests aren't best for their kids, but states have an incentive to not share information around how to do so. Particularly in the era of No Child Left Behind, when we did our research, states could be punished if parents and children did not participate in tests. So we looked at a few questions. We examined how state-level policy creates ambiguity or tries to obscure the rules of opting out, and what are the implications of this for how parents respond to this ambiguity, for equity, and for agency.
Our methodology comprised of two primary methods. The first was to examine a database on the United Opt-out website. And what this database kind of included was the stories of opting out and the experience of stakeholders opting out at various states throughout the United States. So we were able to compile a descriptive picture of the opt-out movement across the states in the United States. The second method in our methodology was to interview key stakeholders to triangulate the descriptive picture that we made with through the opt-out databases.
Looking at our findings, we explored the ideas of policy ambiguity. We found that states were really trying to hide these different policies from parents. We found bureaucrats who were making up rules as well because they didn't even know what they were at the state level. We found parents trying to find loopholes, and we found school administrators coaching families on how to opt out. Looking across our findings, we found that sometimes the different layers were different. So local officials in New York City might be publicly on record encouraging opting out, where other local officials in upstate New York were threatening parents with legal action, even though the same state-level policy followed. We also found that there was often a lack of written language about ambiguity, and that there was great difference among states on this issue. Looking on the parent response side, we found that parents created contested spaces in order to push back against the ambiguity, and particularly through social media and through forming organizations and coalitions, including United Opt-out. They considered how they could share information and use the social media space in order to discourage stigma and share how teachers actually were encouraging families to opt out quietly in some situations. We also found that different types of parents and parents who had stronger political capital and skills to gain information were feeling more empowered to opt their kids out, with the exception that some parents who just felt so strongly about the needs of their child, and particularly families of kids with special needs, were willing often to do whatever it took, no matter what their current circumstances, to learn more about the opt-out process. The difference in ability to gain this information, the difficulty in doing so, though, raises questions for equity among the system, and that's something that's important for further research.
And kind of a final lesson that we learned through this study was kind of an old lesson that we know as policy makers and policy scholars, and that was the intended and unintended consequences of ambiguity in policy design. So one thing we kind of take from this, and it could apply more broadly, or one of the other things that we take from this and could apply more broadly, is that ambiguity could be a policy tactic. And when taken cynically, you can see this as policymakers and politicians may use this tactic when they don't know where they stand on a certain issue. And then kind of as a way to hedge their stance, they can make ambiguous policy and then kind of let it play out in practice, and then afterwards see and then take a side then.
Looking ahead, we're in a new era of federal legislation with ESSA. What we're finding is that this new legislation creates a bit more of an encouragement in space for states to provide information about opt-out, since states won't be punished for having opt-out families as a part of the final tallies. Our information about the NCLB era raises important cautions and consideration for states as they create guidelines for what opt-out might look like in the future.